Okay, Ulysses, we roll along in our player review series for the Tampa Bay Rays, and today we're going to spotlight a dude that can certainly put bat to ball, and that is Harold Ramirez.
Super fun player to watch. 2022 revelation. Maybe we talked about the revelation on the pitching staff. Now we talk about the one position player wise. So let's get started right now.
You are Locked On Rays, your daily Tampa Bay Rays podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, my name is Kevin Weiss.
I'm Ulises Sambrano.
And we are the host of the Locked On Rays podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Be sure you subscribe to that YouTube channel of ours, Locked On Rays. You can check out some good stuff there. Also interact with us on social media, Twitter, Instagram, and we love mailbag questions, emails. Send us an email, voice memo, tell us where you're emailing or voice memoing from, whether it's from Tampa or Dunedin or Portugal, whatever it may be. We love to hear from our listeners locally, regionally, nationally, and internationally as well. So with that housekeeping aside, let's dive into Harold Ramirez, the player, what went well, what went wrong, his future with the team, and we give him a final grade for 2022.
Let's do that indeed. Look at the slash line for Harold, 300 batting average. I mean, that's for old heads, that's pretty cool. Good for him. 300, 343 on base, 404 slugging. That's a 747 OPS. He had only 6 home runs, 58 RBI, a walk rate of 4.4%, a K rate of 16.6. He was a 1.2 F4 guy, a 119 WRC plus, a 119 OPS plus. And again, this is one that we've stressed multiple times with a lot of players. The BSR, the base running category, according to Fangraphs. He was rated, drum roll please, positive or negative? Yeah, you guessed it, everybody. A negative 2.3. So out of all of those things, let's start with the positives. This is a revelation. Nobody expected this guy to hit 300 with a 747 OPS, playing DH, first base, right field, left field, as much as he did. Right, Kevin? I mean, this was not expected by anybody.
No, it's sort of like Jeffrey Springs it was an extremely pleasant major way, and that's probably an understatement to put it mildly. I mean, his acquisition was kind of a footnote of, the Rays went out and got Harold Ramirez. They traded Esteban Quiroz, and that was that. It's like, okay, we'll see what happens. I don't think anybody in their right minds would have expected him to put up the line that he did, and not only the line that he put up, but it seemed like Harold Ramirez was the guy when the Rays were facing a pitcher that nobody else could get to. Nobody else could get a hit off. Nobody else could figure it out. Harold Ramirez seemed to be a guy like when he came up to the plate of, if there's one guy that can do it, that can get a hit off said pitcher, it's Harold Ramirez. He's at least going to make contact and hit the ball hard and spray the ball all over the field. And as you can see by his 300 batting average, he oftentimes did that.
And it was, I love that you say that when they were struggling against a particular pitcher. I can think so many instances where it was the 4th, 5th inning, they don't have a hit, but Harold gets a hit, or you need a hit and he's 0 for 3. You're like, 1 for 4 for Harold seems like that's gonna happen. Boom, he gets a hit. And I understand some people might not like not the approach, but the result of how he gets things done. But ultimately, he did his job. He did his job. Yeah. He was supposed to be a lefty masher, and he was that. I mean, in 111 at-bats against left-handers, he had a slashing of 360, 413, 459. That's an 872 OPS with 2 home runs. Like, he did his job against lefties. Against righties, maybe we can save that for the negatives. But he was a lefty smasher. He was always around to get a hit. And for the most part, he stayed healthy. He wasn't completely healthy. It was unfortunate for him. Like he can't avoid people breaking, or putting fastballs in his fingers. He can't.
Right.
That's not his fault.
It's not like getting, I pulled my quad running to first base. You got something that's really out of your control by getting hit in the thumb. So it's hard to knock him on that by any means. But as you mentioned, and not that we're going into a negative here, but I think that people are sometimes off put by the way that Harold Ramirez does his business at the plate, where, sometimes the result, you love to see more power from a guy like him, but because he does swing at anything and everything, or will swing at anything and everything, because he can make contact and he doesn't like to walk, I think that's part of the approach that people would wish that he would fine tune. But he is the player that he is. And if that's how he gets to the numbers that he produces, so be it. I'm fine with it. I think one thing that also sticks out to me, as you mentioned, is he's not by any means going to win any gold gloves, but the fact that, okay, if you need to put him at first or a corner outfield, you can do that. And he seems to be comfortable or okay with being slotted into the designated hitter role, which is a very difficult thing for many, many players out there. And another thing I give Harold Ramirez credit to is he's bounced around a lot in his career. So I do think he's also a guy that really appreciates being able to maybe settle in, and maybe Tampa Bay can be his home for the next couple of years, hopefully maybe a G-Man Choi type of situation. But if you've read anything on Harold Ramirez, there's nothing analytical about his game. It's basically see ball, hit ball. Just, hey, what does this guy throw? I'll step up to the plate and I'll make contact with it. He doesn't need anything special, it's really, those are the uber super talented guys where it's like, I don't really know how I do it, but I do it. I find a way to make contact and hit the ball hard. It might not, launch very high, but I make solid contact. And, we've heard this about Harold too, is the presence with the organization and with the clubhouse of being a cheerleader for the team and being enthusiastic and being animated and bringing some pizzazz and flair to a franchise that needs pizzazz and flair, and a sport that needs pizzazz and flair. And it goes beyond just dyeing your hair color blue.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I want to highlight the approach of two things he does. While at the plate, he will swing wildly, especially like trying to jack one early in the count. But then the plate coverage and the plate discipline of at least fouling things off will engage, which is pretty cool to see. Like, he will take his hacks. They might not be successful, at least homer-wise, but he does try to, hurt the ball early in the count. Then he will kind of change his approach. That is such a good thing to see. And that's why ultimately he's a 300 hitter. I know a lot of people don't like to hear about batting average, but whatever. I mean, that's to hit 300. Ask any ball player. I'm not telling you to ask, people with their eyes inside the matrix of a spreadsheet. No, I'm asking, ask ball players if they think hitting 300 is something cool that they would like to do. And all of them would unanimously say, yes, I would like to hit 300. It just means something. So he did that, and that's tremendous about his approach at the plate. But I also want to highlight, without, going into the negative segment here, without mentioning the sprint speed at 71st percentile, which is commendable. That's good. It's not tremendous. It's good. It's good. You might even have to say it's really good, but let's just stay with good. The hustle that this guy does is unreal. It is remarkable. He will hustle every single time out of that box. It's unreal that you see this, because not a lot of guys do that. I remember Kevin Kiermaier doing that for the first 3 years, 4 years of his career. Like, afterwards, they had to tell him, hey, yo, like, we need you healthy. Like, it's okay
Right.
to kind of not go 100%. But Harold Ramirez doesn't give a crap. He'll go 100% all the time, breaking up double plays. Again, 71st percentile in sprint speed. So it's not like he's a slow guy, but he's not the guy with the fastest wheels out there, Kevin. And sometimes that doesn't matter, because if you're really hustling as soon as you make contact with the ball, hustling down there to get those 90 feet at first, that could be a choice for the guy behind you, a Wander, a Randy, a Yandy, to make some damage because you broke up that double play, because you got that infielder to lose the throw into the stance, and now you are in scoring position. Like, those little things count so much, and Harold Ramirez should be highlighted and rewarded for doing that.
Yeah, 71st percentile is really good, very good, particularly for a guy that stands at 5'10" and 232 pounds. This isn't a guy that's 5'10" and 175, 180. So it's sort of it. He's not as tall as this guy, but it makes me think sometimes of Avi Garcia, of hits the ball hard and runs hard, just an athlete. And that's something that Harold Ramirez is, where you look at him and you say, you look at him and you don't think he provides the profile that he actually does. So it's interesting from that perspective for sure. Ulises, before we move on to the negatives, anything else positive wise you want to highlight with HRAM?
I think we've covered most of the positives so far. Yeah.
Okay. I guess the fact that, and again, this is more of a humanistic type of quality or element, is being from Colombia and the pride that he brings with that too. So
we talked about that when in the Meet Harold Ramirez episode, when I said that is going to be huge. And unfortunately, the Patino Ramirez, bromance could not happen as much because Luis was hurt. But yeah. I do think that matters, and thank you for bringing that up, because in Colombia, soccer's the main sport, but there are people that obviously follow baseball, and for those fans, for those Colombians that follow baseball, Harold Ramirez is a guy they look up to, like that, especially kids, and the way that he goes about the game is such a lovely thing to know, and that he knows that people are watching back home. People are going to watch me play. How am I going to represent them? And he represents them just beautifully.
Yeah, I think. Again, Colombia is not Venezuela or the Dominican Republic, so I think Harold Ramirez, in his $1 million plus signing bonus that he got coming out of that country, is got to be one of the largest for a player from. He certainly has an imprint on that community as well. But BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. You can get all the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there: football, basketball, soccer, esports, all of it at betonline.net. So head over to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, it is where the game starts. So, all right, moving along here to the negatives with Harold Ramirez. We sort of broached over a couple of them. I think one that really stands out is, yes, he hits the ball very hard, but those aren't exhibited in the amount of home runs, getting only 6 for a guy of his size and a guy that's a DH first base primary guy. And part of that too is he put together the lowest launch angle of his career this season, which I think was around under 5 degrees. And one thing I'll highlight with that too is the BABIP. There could be some regression to the mean here, or maybe it just stays about the same with the elimination of the shift going forward in baseball, but a 350 BABIP. So that tells me some bleeders and bloopers got through that maybe shouldn't have gotten through. But then again, you could look at it another way and say, well, He hits the ball extremely hard on the ground, so they were going to get through nonetheless. But I think that's something to focus on, where what would his batting average be if the BABIP was more average of 300 or 310?
Very astute point of you, because astute point from you, because the low launch angle did cause obviously so many ground balls, and the ground ball percentage was at 53%, or just about 52.5. So that BABIP being so high, how many times did we see seeing eye singles from Harold? It seemed like almost 5 per week. So that does cause for some head scratching and saying, okay, well, how likely is that to happen again? I remember that 2008 World Series run, the All-Star for the Rays, or at least one of the All-Stars, was Deanna Navarro, and he was hitting like 290. But if you look at this BABIP that year, I bet it was like around 360, 370, because there was a lot of Texas bloopers and a bunch of other stuff like that. So it does make you wonder, okay, where's Harold Ramirez? Who is Harold Ramirez actually? Did he just have a really good season and he just had that BABIP luck for him? Because it does look like that. Another thing I do want to point out, besides the ground ball rate and the seeing eye singles, the BABIP, the BSR, man. Again, another guy who is at negative 2.3. He hit into 5 double plays, ground into double plays. But if you look at the stolen bases, he got 3. Caught stealings, 5. Like, I was already giving Yandy the other day a lot of crap because he was at 50%. He was at 3 stolen bases and 3 caught stealing. He's even worse. So I understand. I just said the hustle, and that is awesome to see. But with Rainier Rosarena, we've talked about that there has to be a line of aggressiveness and then just like either carelessness or just being reckless. And I think Harold was a victim of not knowing where that line was a lot of the time in 2022, stretching maybe a single into a double, or going from first to third, going second home. Like, there were times where you really wish you would have done the opposite thing.
Yeah. And if you look at it, negative base runner, negative defender, doesn't have an arm, at least according to Savant, in the 4th percentile. And we mentioned it before that the approach at the plate, he doesn't walk either. Now, he doesn't strike out very much, but he doesn't walk either. And I think that kind of goes back a little bit to the seeing eye singles and not showing or exhibiting more pop. Is part of Harold Ramirez's approach probably is, I'm just going to try to find, if I think I can hit it, I'm going to swing at it, as opposed to I'm going to wait for a pitch that's in my wheelhouse or close to my wheelhouse. Whereas if it's a pitch that most players shouldn't have any business swinging at, the Vladimir Guerrero approach, but Harold Ramirez is that talented of a bat to ball contact guy that he can get away with it. So I think that's something that, look, I look at Harold Ramirez, and we mentioned the BABIP. The expected batting average is actually about as high as it can get. But I see Harold Ramirez, because he has such a good contact skill to him, of he'll always be a 270 hitter, 275 hitter. Will he be a 300 hitter? I don't know. I think this might have been his career high as far as that's concerned. But if you look throughout his career, and even in the minor leagues and drafted or signed internationally, that was kind of the hallmark or the calling card of Harold Ramirez. But I think he is what he is. I don't know. I know that's not very profound by any means, but you're basically going to get probably on average, between a 270, 280 batting average. And if you give him 450 plate appearances, he'll give you 8 to 10 home runs and no walks.
I know it's the negative portion, but I do want to say something about what you just said with his approach of the Vladimir Guerrero approach, which we all, we all saw a lot of. The O contact percentage, which is the percentage of times a batter makes contact swinging at pitches outside the strike zone. The MLB average was around 63%. He's just a little bit above that at 64%. So he does do a better job of hitting balls outside of the strike zone than the average major leaguer. If you wanted to look at somebody who is really good at that, then you would look at Yandy Diaz, who's at 74%. So obviously not elite, but I understand what you're saying. He might not be a 300 hitter again, but his approach at the plate of, if I see it, I want to hit it and I feel comfortable at it. It does make him look like a 260, 270 hitter for a while. But again, there are negatives about his game plan. And that could affect him how the Rays see him in the future, Kevin, because if we talk about how his outlook might be for the 2023 season,
we will continue this discussion, but Ulises, we have to tell the audience about something called Simply Safe.
Well, Simply Safe was named the best home security system of 2022, Kevin, by U.S. News and World Report for a third year in a row. And that is because your family, your home comes first when you're using Simply Safe. You actually can have 24/7 monitoring agents or Simply Safe tech support staff to help you whenever you need. They're always there in an emergency. You can do Simply Safe and include it into your house by going to simplysafe.com/lockedonmlb. I'll say it again, simplysafe.com/lockedonmlb. You get 50% off any new Simply Safe system at simplysafe.com/lockedonmlb. That's 50% off. You're not going to find that anywhere else. So again, use simplysafe.com/lockedonmlb. There's no save like Simply Safe. Gonna throw this out there, okay? Don't go crazy on me, but I feel like Harold Ramirez could very well be a 1-year Ray and be shipped off on a trade, be non-tendered. Like I feel like there is that possibility. I feel more like traded. Obviously, if you put him next to somebody else at Yarbrough or wherever, you might get a couple of lottery tickets like you did with Ji-Man Choi, maybe even better lottery tickets. But I wouldn't be surprised to hear Harold Ramirez has been traded because the peripherals does say that this could have been the best year of his career.
No, I agree with that. I think that there's a line of prospects that the Rays eventually want to get to. Jonathan Aranda, Curtis Mead, others. I also think that power is a big problem for this team. So they want to upgrade that component. And if they can find somebody else who can fill in at DH or first base that can provide more than 6 home runs and 403 at bats, I think that's where they would look towards. Same thing with Ji-Man Choi. I think that they're just trying to figure out the best combination. And let's look at it like this. I don't know what it is about Harold Ramirez, but it's not like it'd be the first time that a team has viewed him as expendable or movable. The Rays are his 6th team.
Right.
Following the Pirates, Blue Jays, Marlins. He's been traded 3 times, designated for assignment twice, and outrighted to the minors once. That's a lot of movement in his career. Because,
I just looking at the Yandy Diaz player review that we did and all the stats that we accumulated. Is Yandy Diaz the 2.0 version of Harold Ramirez? Is Harold Ramirez the Yandy Diaz without the software update? I mean, yes, there's comparisons there. Like the low launch angle, a lot of ground balls, but the problem is Yandy hits the ball harder. Way harder. Yeah, okay, Harold Ramirez have the sprint speed, but like I feel like Harold Ramirez could become a Yandy Diaz. He could become that. But
the only thing I would
I'm just saying, like, the problem is in this roster construction that you're talking about being more power, you already have a better Harold Ramirez in Yandy Diaz. So why would you also plug in a guy that is kind of clunky with the glove, might not provide you power? He hits the ground balls just like Yandy. Yandy's just a better Harold Ramirez. So why have two of the same kind of player? Maybe not same, but comparable. And so you do need more punch. You do need more power. So that's what makes Harold a little bit more expendable than Yandy.
Right, absolutely. And I think that Yandy is definitely a more professional hitter as well, not to mention that he plays third base and first base better than Harold Ramirez does or would do. And Yandy draws walks. That's a big difference as well. He gets on base at a much better clip. So I think there's definitely a lot of truth to that. You already have basically your 300 hitter with not a lot of pop in Yandy Diaz. We can't afford another one, and we can't afford a third one in G-Man Choi. Not saying G-Man Choi is a 300 hitter, but you need to if you're the Rays, I think with the way that you're building your roster, you can't afford to have a Yandy and a Harold Ramirez. You would rather have X name who, okay, he bats 230, 240, but he's going to give us 25 to 28 home runs, whoever that is.
Exactly that. So for his future with the team, I do see it a little bit nebulous. I wouldn't be surprised at all whatsoever if he were to not be with the team in 2023.
Yeah. And I would think that if the Rays traded G-Man Choi for a little something, that they can trade Harold Ramirez for a little something. It's not going to be anything, I think, that blows the door off the fan base, but it's a low minors guy who has some potential.
Yeah, it's going to be another, Hartman, and that'll be okay. Another lottery ticket.
Absolutely. So the question is, Ulises, does Harold Ramirez get traded before spring training?
I don't know about before spring training, but I would put the odds that he will be traded more than he doesn't, for sure.
I agree. All right, let's give Harold Ramirez a grade for 2022. What do you got?
I am going to give him a 93. What he did at times, he was the best hitter for a long time in a lot of those lineups. So professionalism, he did that. Great clubhouse guy. Love the fact that he's racing autism awareness with his hair for his oldest son. That's a cool thing. That's a human thing. Gotta love that. Fan favorite, 93.
Great minds think alike. I also had a 93, and with Harold, you just wonder what could have been if he didn't miss a month due to that thumb fracture. How much more production could he have been able to provide? Maybe the Rays maybe they would have won 88 games instead of 86. You just never know with all of that. So there it is for Harold Ramirez. It very well could be the last time that we see him in a Rays uniform. That's to be determined. We'll keep an eye on that going forward. In the meantime, thank you for making the Locked On Rays podcast your very first listen every day. Now make your second listen the Locked On Sports Today podcast. That is also free and available on all platforms. Hope you all have a wonderful day. Stay safe.